So here are a few things you should know before moving to a new country for a job. The reason why I decided to come up with this topic is because I recently moved for a job. I've also moved a lot for school and for work. Gone to school in Dominican, USA, Canada, Europe, and I've worked in tons of states and places in both Canada and the States. If you know these things, you can stress less and save more. So let's get started. So you moved to another country. You got a job offer in another country for an exciting new job. The first thing you're probably going to have to plan out is the flight ticket because you're going to have to fly there or take a bus there, whichever one works for you prior to starting your job because you're moving away from the area you're used to. So the first thing is that the ticket prices of a flight, we'll start with flights. I don't recommend taking the bus because of the time it will consume. It might be cheaper, but that time wasted will, for a long trip, will simply not be worth it. Flights are significantly faster, so right off the bat, I'm going to say take a flight if you can afford it. The ticket price varies with the time of year you buy the ticket, the demand, how long before your flight you book the ticket, and where you're flying from, as well as other factors. I ideally like to book tickets a month ahead of time, but you sometimes just don't got that option. I've also seen that 3 months ahead planning a trip tends to minimize costs with regards to flight, but this might change with time and presidency and airplane port policies. Uh, Another thing you should know about flights, especially if you're moving, is that they often charge you per bag, and the bags that you check in. And your carry-on is usually free. I've never seen them charge for a carry-on. So sometimes you'll get a free check-in of a bag, sometimes you won't. Furthermore, you have a maximum weight on the bags that you can check in. There's a limit. I think it's 15 pounds, or no, sorry, 30. You'll have to check with the airplane or the airport what their weight limit is. This cost that they have, or whether it's free or not for a check-in bag, varies with the airline. I've sometimes had to pay for one bag, sometimes I don't. It probably also changes with airport policy, so you'll want to check that out ahead of time. Furthermore, the cost per additional bag, in addition to that one bag, is exponential, so you're not going to be charged a flat fee. So one bag might be free, the second bag might be $70 additional, the third bag might be $200, which is what I paid for taking 3 bags. So I paid $270 in addition to my flight ticket for checking in 3 bags. And that was the maximum I could take on the flight. You can't check in more than that. That's something to note. That actually came up to more than my flight ticket, the actual bags I had to check in, because I wasn't aware of this policy ahead of time. Another thing you should be aware of is before you book your flight, you should find out if your company will reimburse you for the flight, buy you a ticket or not. You got to find out what they'll help you with or what they won't help you with. I usually book my flights, on a side note, online using a flight cost compare website that compares different companies' airport airlines and gets me the cheapest ticket. That could save you money. So I also found that flying out on Saturdays and Sundays tends to be the most expensive. So you're probably going to want to book your ticket and your return ticket if you're going to come back later on from Tuesday to Thursday, because those are low volume times. So the prices of tickets and flying out during that time is cheaper. Now your work visa. You want to get your work visa ahead of time because sometimes the border guards could be a bit finicky, and if they reject your work visa if you can get it at the actual border, you're going to be banned from the U.S. for a couple of years, or any other country. They'll put a ban on you if they find you suspicious. So if you're going to a visa authority, make sure you have the correct paperwork and got everything straight. You're going to want to have your documentation from the company and your potential employer, the job offer letter, as well as any other information you might need, like a degree, citizenship, ahead of time. Go prepared for the visa interview and everything else. So now packing. So you're packing for your flight. You got your flight. You got the best price. You got it at the right time. Oh, another addition suggestion is that where you fly out from actually can affect the costs. So if you're very close to the border, sometimes it's cheaper to fly within a country than outside a country, like between countries. Um, so if you're close to the border, you can, and you're going from one state in the U.S. to another. Sometimes it's cheaper to um, book a airline ticket at an airport within like New York and fly out from there, or Buffalo and fly out from there, and you'll save a couple of hundred. Even flying between countries tends to vary in price. So if you're in Canada versus the US, sometimes it's cheaper to fly to Europe from the US um, versus Canada. And that depends on the presidency and stuff. I remember during the Obama presidency, it used to be cheaper to fly out from the States. When Trump came in, it became more expensive to fly out to Europe from the States. So that changes as well. So keep that in mind. Now, packing. This is, you probably would figure this out on your own. I don't think this is a big deal, but I thought I would throw it in there. I like to make sure I have essentials like my toothpaste, toothbrush, a towel, shampoo, passport, debit cards, credit cards, clothes, smartphone, laptop, and money, and other things I might need. If you're checking in a bag, keep your liquids like your toothpaste, shampoo in your check-in because they're going to confiscate it from you if you carry it across as in on your carry-on onto the plane. Furthermore, you don't want any sharp objects, which is common sense because that can get you in trouble. No weapons and stuff like that. But that's just common sense. Okay, so now let's get to housing. Prior to moving for a job, you should research the area you're going to work in for places you can live and gather as much information about the area as you can. Look online for places you can rent from and call around and ask questions like, is the place furnished? Will you need to do a background check before I move in? And if so, how long will it take? Sometimes background checks take as long as a week. Sometimes they'll take a day. It depends. Will I need references in order to move into this place? Are utilities included? And if not, how much do they usually cost? How far is transit or grocery stores from my location, etc.? Now, I don't suggest you actually pay for that place and grab it before you move to the area. Ideally, you'll do your research ahead of time, fly out, book a hotel in the area, and rent a car and go around and check out the areas, as well as ask questions to locals. The reason why I say this is because it can save a lot of headache, because sometimes if you book ahead of time, that you'll find out that area isn't what you thought it was, like the transport system might be um, crappy and other stuff. So before you get the housing, ask the questions, understand the area, and then actually go there. Um, so let's say you actually flew out and arrived at the airport. Now you have your bags and stuff. Once you arrive at the airport, I suggest renting a car for a day from the airport, and hopefully you can return this car to other locations, nearer to the hotel you decide to choose. By renting the car, you can actually explore the area near to your workplace and find a hotel that charges less. Um, Furthermore, you'll be able to carry your baggage. Um, and in addition to this, the reason why I say return that car after a day after you get a hotel is because airport rentals tend to be exponentially more than renting vehicles from um, locations away from the airport because the airport has 24-hour availability as well as additional costs. But at the same time, an airport rental is still cheaper in addition to gas than driving around a day with an Uber or Lyft. That's why I suggest getting a car rather than getting those. Worst case, you're going to have to return the car the next day, but you already have your hotel, the airport rental the next day, and you can take an Uber or a Lyft back to your hotel and then get your other rental away from it. You'll still save more because you're going to keep this rental for a couple of days. This rental, I suggest it's a van, the one you get away from the airport. Okay, so now I'm assuming you arrived a day before work, and you got your hotel, you got your van, you checked out the area, you got a cheap hotel. Now, once you start working, ask around work, look at billboards, and go talk to people in grocery stores and other places about transportation, housing, neighborhood cost of living, and physically go there and check out the houses you checked out before flying out and called and asked questions about, and the neighborhoods they're in, and figure out how you're going to get to work from those particular houses if they aren't close by. The reason why I say this is because sometimes neighborhoods online are a lot different from what they are when you get there. So they might be a lot more shady, a lot less developed, might have a type of person you're not comfortable around, so or high crime rate, or they might be run down. So that's why it's best to look in person, because a lot of times when you look online, it's not what you imagined. Now for housing. So once you get there and you check out these houses, I usually like to rent out a furnished room initially, if you can. Not all places will have that option when you move for work. The reason why I like a furnished room is because you're not going to have to buy furniture. And the reason why I say a room instead of an apartment is because you're going to be able to interact with other people in the area. Use this time to save up and choose a location near your work and for that room, and get familiar with your job and work hard so you can make a good impression. Find a room near a grocery store so you can walk to. I don't like investing in cars right away because they're a money back you and the insurance and stuff. And plus you're going to need to get a local license in order to purchase a car. Furthermore, if something goes wrong, you're going to need a 3-month nest egg in case something goes wrong. The reality is that you might not always be able to get a rental based on where you move to. Furthermore, the price of rent and cost of living tends to vary significantly based on the area, from area to area. So you might actually have to pay more for groceries or housing, things you couldn't imagine, right, ahead of time. Also, the transit systems in all the cities, even in this day and age, aren't very developed. I've actually lived in a city that only had one bus, and that bus would come once every hour during rush hour, and then on weekends it came like once every 3 hours, and then on Sundays it didn't even run. So beware of that, and sometimes you won't be able to get that information ahead of time. Furthermore, sometimes it's not worth taking the bus system, because I was told in the most recent city that I was in was that they don't accept transfers between buses. So sometimes you can pay for one bus and they'll give you a ticket, which you can use on other buses. This isn't the case everywhere. So realize this. So that's why I say move to an area and get familiar with it and go around a bit before jumping and investing in a couple of months. Also note that the price of rent and housing and leasing fluctuates with the time of year, the demand, and where you're going. So don't be discouraged and take this into consideration. Also, oftentimes the locals and might be aware of websites to offer better bargains than what you're used to, websites that you're familiar with, and sometimes fellow travelers will know more. That's why I say talk around and ask around, rather than just going with a website you're familiar with and taking the wrong deal. That could save you some. So worst case, you're not going to be able to rent out a place that's already furnished, or lease, and you might be forced to lease a place. That's happened before. So before heading to like a commercial store like Walmart or something, I suggest checking out places like Craigslist for items you can get a significant markdown. Things like lamps, tables, chairs, sofas, TVs. You can get these secondhand and save a lot of money. I do recommend buying things like a mattress and blankets new for hygiene purposes. But the cost of savings are huge by buying things secondhand directly from other people that are trying to get rid of them. Doing so will save you money, and you can do this by renting out that van. So when you're at the hotel and I said rent out a vehicle for a couple of days. If you rent out a van for a couple of days away from the airport, you can use that to move like the sofa and the other furniture, and also stock up on groceries. Okay, so now software. Some countries don't have, they have a countrywide firewall, and you're not going to be able to access the websites that you need to access, like Gmail and stuff. China's an example. So if you want to access your home accounts from that country, it's best to pre-download the VPNs, because they often block download of those VPNs as well. So that way you can get around the firewall and access all the sites you usually access. So pay for it or whatever. It'll save you a lot of headache. So now you got your place. So you're leasing or renting out a place. The first thing you're going to want to do is get a local credit card and open up your bank account. You're probably going to need proof of employment and a place of residency. You could, if your employer allows you to do this, you can put down your workplace and they'll just forward the mail to you before you lease out your apartment. That could save a lot of headaches. Um, Also realize with these bank accounts, if your job ends and you tell the bank that your visa expired because it was connected to your job, they'll shut down your account and send the money to the state government. At least this is how it was. I don't know if that's changed or not. So withdraw your assets and know the local laws. Um, so now, finally, the company you work for. You got to be a bit careful about this because some agencies are just trying to make money, right? So you're just a product that they interviewed and then they're forwarding to another company. So because of that, things could go wrong. It's not just with the agencies; it's also with management or the company culture, or there might have been some misunderstanding on the job position and whatnot, right? Um, so you got to remember, agencies get paid by the placement. So sometimes it's good to plan for something going wrong. So, for example, I once actually was placed by an agency and they had a contract clause that allowed the company to try me out for a day. And that's even, I didn't even get to work on the product or anything. I just came in, sat around, and they decided that it, they just decided they didn't want to hire anyone, like after half a day. So then contract was caught right away. So that would have been a terrible thing if I'd actually moved for that location because they're interested in saving their money, especially with small businesses. So if you're going to move for a job, ideally move for a job for a big company because small companies tend to post things. If it's you're working in a place that you're used to, small companies are okay. So there are a lot of things that can go wrong, but there are also a lot of things that can go right. So take leaps of faith, but don't be reckless and plan ahead because especially when you're moving, you need to plan ahead and take these things into consideration in order to make your travel go a lot more smoothly. So yeah, those are my tips for now on moving to another country for work. I hope it was useful. Till next time, see you later. Bye.